Hi everybody, I'm Kim Winter. I'm your host for today's podcast. Before I forget, please feel free to go to Logistics Executive TV on YouTube and check out the other podcasts that we've been doing in the last few months. So today I'm very pleased to welcome a very special guest from Melbourne in Australia, Leigh Williams, who is the founder and managing director of eStore Logistics Australia. Very unique company, as you'll find out during the conversation today. Leigh, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to talk to you today, Kim. Thanks.
Great. So, Leigh, you guys are the largest warehouse and order fulfilment organisation providing specialist e-commerce services to and omni-channel retail services to the market in Australia, which is no mean feat. Prior to starting eStore in 2008, you were with Accenture and IBM. And I seem to recall probably about 2008, 2009, you and I were on the speaking circuit in various places. And I remember hearing about this new startup company, eStore, and it was really quite something new in the Australian marketplace. So congratulations on what you've achieved so far. And I'm sure we're going to have an interesting discussion today about the story. So let's jump straight into it. Why don't you give us a bit of a background on your story and how eStore started and a little bit about the journey today.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. The business, like you said, started back in 2008. Around that time, e-commerce was starting to take off in Australia. At that time, I was working at IBM and Accenture and also doing a bit of e-commerce on the side, importing stuff from China or from other parts of Asia and selling those on eBay. Around that same time, about a year or so earlier, a good friend of mine from high school, Ruslan Kogan, had started Kogan.com, and he was also struggling with fulfillment. He was trying to work out how to manage that side of things, and I was finding when I was working at IBM and Accenture that I was writing emails to my customers before work. I had to get up quite early, 5 a.m., package up my packages, take them to the post office. And that was fine for sort of 10, 20, 30 orders a day. When things started to pick up, we both sort of identified that there was a requirement in the Australian market for a business to start up and do this type of fulfillment.
Now, I read that somewhere you guys even were back at school or uni days together.
Yeah, it was actually high school we met at Melbourne High back in 1998 or around that time. So we both had similar sort of interests around the time, whether that was e-commerce and also technology as well. So we kind of came together as mates because we both had those interests at the time.
Cool. And I guess in those days, e-commerce was really in very developmental stages. It was the early part of the wave, I guess, at that point in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. So that really gave me the opportunity at the time to start the business, and Ruslan and I are business partners. So we started the business together 12 years ago. We're a technology-enabled e-commerce fulfillment provider. So we've got 5 warehouses across Australia from which we're utilising, state-of-the-art systems, robotics, with our expertly trained people to fulfill about 20 million orders per year.
Well, Ruslan Kogan, of course, is also fairly much of legendary status in Australia, taking on the big retailers way back when, over 10, 12 years ago now, and coming out with all sorts of outrageous claims of being able to bring in same like-for-like products into Australia at around about half the price. And I remember on TV at the time he was at war with a number of the major established retailers who said he wouldn't last long and the products were inferior. But of course, we've just seen, I think I was reading in the Sydney Morning Herald last week about the spectacular results for Kogan and the established bricks and mortar retailers actually during this COVID period. So retail in general and online in particular have done exceptionally well over this period. From your perspective, what sort of clients have you been focusing on, and has that client mix changed over the years, or how has it evolved?
Yeah, so Kogan.com was our foundation client, and they've been a really interesting business for us to go along the journey with because they've got such a complex supply chain and a wide range of products. It's given us the opportunity over this 10, 12-year period to develop systems and processes that meet many different requirements. And when I say that, fulfillment for, say, a tiny $1 or $2 iPhone screen protector that has very little margin on, is very different to that of, a 3-seater couch or a king-size bed that, is difficult to deliver and needs that white glove type service. So we service quite a variety of customers. At the sort of entry level is a pure play online retailer that does about 50 orders per day, has quite a small SKU range, might already have a few hundred different products, and has their own e-commerce platform and also selling maybe on a marketplace like Amazon and eBay with it all integrated together. And then we service everything up to large pure play online retailers such as your Kogan.com, Temple & Webster's, another Australian listed company, a pure play online retailer that's a marketplace and also takes their own inventory risk with their own stock, and the My Deals of the world. So other big online retailers like that. And that's enabled us to then widen our offering out to omni-channel retailers. So these are businesses like Patagonia, for example, that everyone probably hears of, that the clothing brand that's got their own bricks and mortar stores, also sells their product into independents and the big box retailers that have sort of strict compliance requirements. In Australia, we've got Myer and David Jones. In the US, it's Walmart and these types of big box retailers. So it's really anything with like an e-commerce flavour.
And you guys, of course, have been leaders in this field for some time. I want to drill down on technology because you've really been at the forefront of technology, in particular robotics. And I know it's a passion of yours. I've heard you speak about it at various conferences, and I know things have evolved since I saw you last, which was, probably over a year and a half, 2 years ago. So but before we do that, maybe we can just pan back out, take the helicopter view and maybe give our audience a bit of an understanding of where the e-commerce and retail space is at in Australia at the moment. There's been some spectacular results, but of course not every road is paved with gold, and there are a lot of dynamics going on around the world at the moment. Australia is not always front and centre of the global picture, but of course it's a very important economy and it's got its own challenges and interesting byplay going on with various other marketplace players such as China at the moment from a political perspective. But tell us a little bit about what's happening in the e-commerce and retail space in Australia currently.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, e-commerce penetration was about 10% for non-food goods, so sales are online, and we're lagging way behind that of, say, the US or the UK. So the UK was about 20%. So it's quite an immature market over here in Australia, and that is really reflected even in how some of the supply chains have been set up to service e-commerce and also consumer expectations. So it's only very recently, that consumers have been expecting faster delivery, later cut-offs for same-day fulfilment and even same-day delivery as well. Now, we've seen a huge acceleration of that through the COVID period of what's happened in the last few months. And even just looking at the year-on-year volumes that we've seen being traded through our customer base, through March and April, we sort of saw about a 30 to 40% year-on-year increase. By the time we hit June, we were just under 100% year-on-year increase. We were at about 98, 99%. And in July, we saw a 110% increase. So because there's been obviously the inability with the lockdowns for people to visit retail stores, it's been an interesting shift in consumer habits of what they've been moving to online shopping. And it'd be interesting to see how that plays out into the future. I think a lot of people that previously weren't shopping online have learned about the convenience and with the shipping costs decreasing, will find that, they don't need to, drive to the shopping centre. They don't need to fight to get that parking spot. They don't need to then, navigate all the different people in the different stores and the pushy sales assistants to make that purchase. They can easily go online, get something done much quicker, compare prices that way, and have something conveniently delivered to their door fast.
Right. You've recently opened a new warehouse. I was reading in the MHD magazine, which is one of Australia's, if not Australia's, preeminent supply chain logistics magazine, particularly for materials handling. There's a brand new site. Tell us a little bit about the site and some of the technology. Is this the site where you put the AMR technology in?
Yeah, so this is really exciting site for us. So it's our new headquarters, which is based in Melbourne. It's a 26,500 square metre facility that we essentially designed with our consultants who we partnered with, and also a property developer. So this thing's been set up commercially and operationally to be as optimal as we could set it up based on our needs. And within that DC, we've rolled out these autonomous mobile robots, which is actually our second implementation of this technology. Our first one was earlier in the year at another site. Our business case has been tested at that initial site, and we've proceeded to roll out over 200 of these robots within this DC over a multi-storey mezzanine. And across this mezzanine will be, packaging machines, CMC machines which box up the product, satcheling machines, and also sortation, which essentially allows us to sort by shipping carrier or by priority and that sort of stuff. And all this stuff's been put in place essentially to push back the cutoff for same-day fulfilment to as late as possible. So we've pushed that needle to 4 p.m. in a cost-effective way using this technology, and then also to cost-effectively support same-day delivery. As we all know, that as soon as there's an order which has got to be treated in its own discrete way to be picked and packed within a warehouse, when I say discrete, to be picked and packed for same-day delivery as a VIP rushed order, as soon as you do that in a manual process, it becomes cost prohibitive unless the retailer make a loss. This technology enables us to do that cost effectively, and so that Aussie consumers can get their products fast.
Excellent. Well, what sort of decision-making process did you go through to select that automated mobile robot AMR technology? I mean, and what was the tipping point that had you reach that point of deciding it was cost effective or sensible to go to that high level of AI technology? What was the tipping point, and who did you use to assist you in that decision making process?
Yeah, good question. So the project started about 3.5 years ago, and the problem that we wanted to solve was how do we get greater throughput and support faster delivery. So when we first started the project, we hired some consultants because we had no experience in robotics and no experience in automation. All of our experience internally was digital automation, software systems, and that sort of stuff. So when we started the project, we started by engaging some consultants on a small initial project to just help us understand the approach that they took in automation selection and what data they looked at and what metrics and that sort of stuff. So we worked with some people who essentially had experience in e-commerce in Australia and experience with implementing automated systems. We took a model that they had produced and saw that it was a very good model for us to initially look at, but it didn't quite, meet our needs and with our business. So that essentially looked at what fixed automation was available. And at the time, we looked at what's called the Swisslog Auto Store, which is a big cube that takes up very little space within warehouses and essentially holds totes of products, and the system digs into this. The system has robots that run around across the top and that digs in to pull out these totes and bring those totes to users to pick orders. So we looked at that in a fair bit of detail. We also looked at ASRS systems, so automatic storage and retrieval systems, kind of like your Dematic high-rise bay systems that you've got sort of these you've got these robots that go from level to level to pick out the totes and bring them across conveyors to the user to pack out the orders. And what we looked at, and essentially what our challenge was at the time, was that eStore's a profit center, right? We're not a retailer where the warehouse is a cost center, and all of our customers aren't essentially, taking the risk with us. They're, paying a price per order or pay a fee per storage item within our system, and we're kind of at the mercy of what type of products they're sending to us. So essentially, what we realised was fixed automation came at very high capex, and fixed automation also comes with significant risk and a long payback. So we sort of took this journey and then started looking at AMRs. And when we started looking into the AMR business case, we found that it fits the highest percentage of our SKU range compared to what the other fixed automation could take. The capital expenditure was much lower and the payback was much shorter. And so that essentially offered a far more flexible approach for our business and far less riskier. So the payback's less than half of that of some of the other automation types.
Wow, that's interesting. So I suppose you've ended up being a little bit of a test or a show site for that sort of technology on the scale that you have deployed it in Australia?
Yeah, so there's not many implementations of this type of technology in Australia. It's pretty new to the country, the AMRs, and the way they work is essentially they're small. They're these robots that they're about 100 or 200 kilos. They move these shelving units around. Essentially, once product comes in from suppliers, from the retailer's suppliers, we receipt it into our warehouse management system and then put it away into the storage, into the AMR system. The robot presents these shelving units to the user and it optimizes, it goes and calculates all the stock which has come in receipt and optimizes how that product should be put away into those shelving units to get the best storage density so that you use the lowest storage footprint. The system then looks at and analyzes using historical data matching, the SKU profile of the stock that's sitting in the system, the velocity of those SKUs being sold historically, and the system's constantly moving around all those storage units within the system, the mobile storage units, the MSUs, and optimizing them so that it's predicting when an order comes through what the likelihood is of that product within those storage units being required. And so it's putting the hot SKUs towards the front where the users are and putting the less, your D movers at the back. And, while we're even not operating, we operate about 20 hours a day. When there's no staff on site, that system's still looking at all the orders that are pulling in live, in real time, and optimizing the layout of those shelving units in the system so that once the users start picking, it's in the most optimal layout to perform that.
Mm. So what when you decided to go with this technology, Australia, of course, is a very expensive country on a global scale in terms of labour. The compliance and union issues around the Australian environment means that labour is, by comparison, quite expensive. Can you share with us any sort of big picture numbers in terms of percentage advantage or return on investment you've gained over a period of time since introducing this technology against continuing employing more and more labour?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when people look at the robots, people think that they're replacing jobs. The fact of the matter is they're not. They're allowing us to create more jobs because this industry, being e-commerce and retail, as those volumes increase, more people are required within warehouses, more technology people are required to support those technologies, more people work within the retailers. But essentially what that's enabled us to do is it's produced about a 300 to 400% productivity gain in being able to fulfill orders, and the payback on the system is far less than 5 years.
Wow, it's pretty impressive. What sort of journey did you go on in terms of integration of this technology with your other existing technology, with your back-end systems, with your billing, with your customer interface that was already existing in the business? I mean, we hear horror stories quite often about new technology implementations all around the world, especially for major implementations. Maybe share with us, if you can, a little bit about how that journey took place and how that integration has gone.
Sure. So one thing we pride ourselves on at eStore is we've become experts in all the technologies we use. We try not to rely too much on the vendor for support. So, for example, we run the Manhattan Scale WMS, which is a tier 1 WMS, and Gartner sort of looks at that as the number one visionary and leader. And we don't rely on that vendor, being Manhattan, for much support to customize and configure the application. So we've done the same thing with our AMR project. We've really skilled up a team which is able to operate, customize, and all those sorts of things within the system without having outside support. Now, we went live with our first implementation in March, and our vendor is based overseas, and our vendor couldn't enter the country at that time due to COVID restrictions. And we had a super successful go live with that. And probably one of the keys with that is we worked hand in hand with the vendor without having any sort of middleman in between us and the vendor. And that's worked well because we understand our business the best and the vendor understands their technology the best. So we've been able, by having that direct line of communication into them and not having a third party in the middle, that's enabled us to get a really good outcome. And we've got a really good partner and probably a showpiece for these guys, moving into the future. But if you look at sort of how our group of systems hang together, we've gone and built we've got pre-built integrations into all the major e-commerce platforms. So, your WooCommerce, your Shopify, your BigCommerce, your Magento, all those big e-commerce platforms that most retailers run on. We've also got behind that a proprietary fraud optimization system. And that's a system we've actually built from day one. So it's still a part of the software that I built back 10 years ago. It's been heavily changed since then with our software development guys. But essentially that system takes an order from a customer and then works out how the order should be packaged. So it's got 3D cubing and cartonization algorithms within it that work out, based on pre-agreed business rules of the retailer, how the order item be packaged, whether it goes in a satchel, whether it's going to be shipped in a box, whether it's got some bubble wrap or something around it, and that's completely system directed to the user. And it also looks at what shipping carriers are available and suitable to ship the order and what warehouse the stock's available in. So that fraud optimization system essentially enables our team to quickly choose a shipping carrier, choose a warehouse, and then to push that order into our Manhattan Scale WMS with that additional information. Within that, we've then got 7 ways to pick, pack, and order. And so we've got algorithms within that are essentially assessing the SKU profile that are coming in with all those orders, the volume of each SKU going out in the day, and it's essentially pushing that order into one of those 7 buckets. And a SKU could go into bucket A or bucket C on any given day, just based on the profile going through. And those buckets work out the most optimal way to ship that order.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked a little while ago about technology being an enabler as opposed to replacing people. It's great to hear, and as you say, a lot of the market thinks that technology is there to replace people, but certainly being an observer of your growth in Australia in recent years, it's clearly an enabler, and you're growing from strength to strength. What, just as a snapshot, what points of wisdom could you give to other individuals or heads of IT or heads of operations or other companies, enterprises looking at going down the route of the type of technology that you've selected? Are there any comments you could make and guidance you could provide around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my opinion, unless you're like a Nike or an Adidas that know that they've been manufacturing hats, T-shirts, shoes for 30 years, and they know the roadmap moving forward is probably only going to be hats, T-shirts, and shoes. Unless you're one of those retailers, fixed automation is fine. But if you're not one of those retailers, you need to consider flexibility and what happens when the business changes. And when I say the business changes, the way that things can change is SKU profiles can change, but then order profiles. If you design a system, for example, which is built for traditional retail stores, which have hundreds or thousands of items in each order, the solution looks different to that of an e-commerce order that has an average of 1.5 or 2 units in an order. So what happens if your business today needs to pivot and move into a different order profile? You need to consider what flexibility is available of that automation and what the impact of the automation is once that profile changes.
So the key is really just ensuring that the automation that you implement is flexible and is going to be suitable for what happens in 2, 3, 4 or 5 years' time. You don't want to get caught in a trap that you implement something, it becomes not fit for purpose in the future, and it either needs to be mothballed or highly modified, and there's no return on investment. And that's why I guess AMR is quite a good option for many different business types, because the capital required to be put down in this type of solution is quite low. It's modular. You can expand it quite easily. It's not like one of these big automation systems where you've got to do one big CapEx thing in one go. And in working out and establishing all the different options that you're going to consider in terms of putting in like this sort of automation system, it's really important to consider what your data looks like, go through your item master, go through what the SKU profiles look like, and match all that data together and model it out on multiple different scenarios.
Okay. What I do just talk and pan out a little bit now and talk about last mile, which is always a really big issue for anybody in the e-commerce supply chain. How does e-commerce work? How does last mile work in your model? Are you providing last mile services or purely fulfilment services? And how do you see the market in Australia? I mean, I've been reading online a lot of stories about really serious delays in last mile in Australia in recent times. Of course, the big suppliers there, including Australia Post, have had to really ramp up, going to pop-up centres and bringing in a whole lot of new resources and people to meet their delivery standards. What's the last mile perspective been from your side?
Yeah, so at eStore, we contract out the last mile to various different shipping carriers. So Australia Post is one of them. We essentially aggregate all of our clients' volume together so that they can access cost savings from that economies of scale. Now, Australia, for anyone that knows it, we're a very small population for a few small capital cities, and it's a very challenging environment for the last mile, and it makes it quite expensive for the delivery. When I say quite expensive, I know in the UK and the US you can ship something for a few dollars it's possible to do that in Australia, within Melbourne and Sydney. But if you start moving a parcel that's, say a case of wine, a lot of Aussies love their wine. Shipping that around the country gets into the tens or 15s of dollars to get across, to Perth from Melbourne or somewhere like that, simply due to the distance. It's many thousands of kilometres. Now, Australia Post, it's really difficult for other carriers to actually meet their level of service. While there have been a few delays recently, they've responded quite well to what, the increase in volume. That it's their hub and spoke network that makes them the best. If you look at how many deliveries they perform within a single postcode, it's far higher than any other carrier within the country from an e-commerce perspective. And then they've also got, obviously the post offices to lean on to drop off parcels and that sort of stuff. It's pretty difficult for startups to compete with that type of scale unless they're just operating within Metro Melbourne or Metro Sydney and offering those types of services. Now, what the interesting thing is, though, if an e-commerce retailer, peels off, say, part of the delivery to a smaller startup, they're then butchering out some of that volume which goes to Australia Post, and that affects the dispersion and the rates and the commercial offer that Australia Post has. So they really do have the market in Australia. There have been some delays, and their acquisition of StarTrack has been quite a good strategic one, because with that they've introduced a new service called Same Day, and we've been utilising that for some of our customers and to enable them to, some of the retailers offer their consumers 3-4 hour delivery. And the way that works is StarTrack comes in, they take away a bundle of orders to the road DC, they sort that and then go and deliver that within 3 hours. And that takes away all the sortation requirements within the fulfilment centre, which pushes back the cost of StarTrack, which is actually quite good.
Yeah, it's a dynamic marketplace and quite unusual environment geographically in Australia, as you say, so quite challenging. I'm sure we can talk about last mile till the cows come home, and maybe we'll talk about that another day as well. But before I wrap up, Leigh, I just wanted to get a quick comment from you. Again, big subject, and I'd love to come back to you and talk about this further down track in your evolution. But give us a quick heads up on your view of the importance of data in your business. And again, I'll restrict you because I know this is a passion of yours. But talk to us a little bit about the data and what the value proposition for you about understanding data has been.
Yeah, so we're a highly data-driven business. And that's probably one reason why I even started the business back, 11, 12 years ago, because, logistics is, we've got a set of humans and people which we're relying on to perform scalable and repeatable tasks. And to enable us to do that, we've got to have these robust systems sitting around it, assisting those users to create those repeatable outcomes, the same outcome every time, those scalable outcomes as well. Now, one thing that I've found since the start of this journey, that data is just paramount in being able to work out how to gain efficiency and to establish, historically what's happened, then how can we use that information to to our advantage to build processes and systems around that to deliver successful outcomes. It all even starts when we talk to a retailer, understanding what their profile looks like and how clean that data is. It enables us to pop it into a cost model to be able to pop out the best possible cost and put the best proposal to them. But most importantly, for our algorithms to be able to perform all these calculations, such as how to package an order, which wave packing flow it should go through, which shipping carrier to send it with, it all relies on really accurate data. And that even comes down to a granular level of making sure we've got dimensions of products correct within our system, making sure that we've done enough analysis to work out which packaging types are the best to use for different orders types, making sure that, up front we agree what shipping carriers, and it's all in the data, are most suitable for some types of orders versus not suitable for other types of orders. And even down to, flagging different products and ensuring that, the glassware gets wrapped in bubble wrap and the T-shirt gets put in a mailing bag. This is all data and this is all business rules. And if we can get all this right, we're able to configure systems and set up processes which work super well and create this seamless process so that as soon as an order comes through from that shopping cart, it just seamlessly flows through our systems making decisions, humans are performing processes, and then shipping carriers are performing that last mile as soon as possible and creating this great outcome for Aussie consumers.
Yeah, the focus on data really rings true with our corporate advisory teams in Australia, Asia and here in regards to the projects they're doing with clients at the moment. It all starts with data, and we're bringing on more people into our own teams in regards to data analytics and understanding the value of data. A couple of quick questions before I let you go. One, I always like to ask people who I'm interviewing and executives in the marketplace, what are the two or three aspects of characteristics that you're looking for in people that you're bringing into your business, first of all? So if you can just share with us what those key elements are that you're looking for in new hires. What are the two or three things that you'd be looking for?
So one of the things that we're working really hard on right now is building our culture internally and values. And when people ask me, what is your culture? And it's simple. It's who you hire, fire, and promote. So when we're looking at people, for example, right now we've got a really strong focus on operations team, building our leadership within that. And we're talking about, site managers, we're talking about operations director type people, we're talking about people who are leading hundreds of people. And we're looking at what their people skills are like, what their decision-making skills are like, how they can influence people. We're not interested in the old, waving fist around and telling people. We're looking at how we can bring leaders into our organisation and how we can have those leaders develop the people within our business so that the next team leader becomes the next supervisor, the next supervisor becomes the next site manager, the next site manager becomes the next stage, a state manager, and so forth. So that's one really key thing. And right now we're really bolstering our technology team. So there's a bunch of roles we've got out in the market. Interestingly, it's one really tough skill we're looking for right now is it's a technical product manager for our WMS team, which has 7 or 8 people in it, and it's someone who can sort of work in a product manager type way, but is also very technical and basically runs a roadmap for that application. And that's actually a really hard role for us to hire for right now. There's not many people that have that type of experience and is available and in Melbourne due to the travel restrictions. Yeah. We're hiring for a bunch of roles, but they're probably the two front of mind things that we've got at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I can assure you that those sorts of skills are light on in a number of the markets where we operate in Asia and the Middle East. Final question, I know you've got to go, but really bit of a snapshot. What do you see for eStore in the coming months and years? What are the objectives? What's the journey going to look like moving ahead?
Yeah, so we've really opened the door to a whole set of new markets with this automation we've put in. So with implementing these robots, we've essentially democratized the access for business of all sizes to this type of technology. If you look at the US, for example, or other, even in Australia and other markets around the world, it's usually businesses like Amazon or other large retailers that have access to this technology, which then give them the ability to ship cost effectively and super fast. Now, we're currently working on a project to, open this door so that even small businesses, hundreds of small businesses, can outsource their fulfillment with self-service platform, so they can essentially sign up to this platform, download all of these documents on how to interface with us, and they for the instructions to ship the stock into our warehouses, and then they can get access to this robotic system and enable them to then interact through our customer service layers and that sort of stuff to ship orders. So we're calling that eStore Lite, kind of a one-size-all-fits model, and that's something we're currently working on and pretty excited about, which we're starting to test with a couple of small customers right now.
Great. Hey, Leigh, look, I really appreciate you joining us today, and I hope our audience has been able to pick up and enjoy the journey that you've been on and take some learnings from it. You guys have done a fantastic job in Australia. I really do look forward to following the progress moving forward. Look forward to catching up with you again and following on with the story. Thank you for joining us. Best of luck with the COVID there. I think the government of Victoria is looking to lighten up on the restrictions there. I know you guys will look forward to getting outside more and getting back into the marketplace. Thanks for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thanks, Kim. Great to catch up.
All the best.
Have a great week.
Thank you. You too.